Good afternoon, Archbishop.
Good afternoon, Makani.
It's been a while since we've done one of these. Thank you very
Probably
much.
about 2 months, maybe.
At least.
Okay.
Yeah, and a few things have changed in that time, as you well know. Number one, we're back to full attendance in church. And how do you feel about that, first of all?
Well, I'm delighted that we're back to the possibility of full attendance. We're not quite at full attendance, but that's on us.
That's what I was going to ask. How's it gone so far? Do you know?
I think it's gone very well from what I've been able to hear and see. I usually ask people.
Yeah.
And the answer that comes back is they usually say they're about 50, 60, 70%. Nobody's ever said we're back
100%.
100%.
Yeah. Which is understandable.
It is. It's the summertime for one thing.
Well, that's true.
But
yeah.
I think some people are still a little leery. And
yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of people are still very cautious and concerned. About coming together, about variants, etc. What do you say to the people who are still for various? I mean, there's a lot of different reasons people have.
There's a lot of reasons.
But what do you say in general to people who are nervous and concerned about coming together for Mass?
I think it's fair for a person who is nervous, and they're nervous about going to any public setting, that if they find themselves unduly nervous, I think that's a reason why the obligation wouldn't hold.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you go out to dinner to a restaurant the night before and then say you're nervous about going to church, I would say, maybe you ought to think
something
a little
to look
more seriously about that the obligation might apply to you. But particularly people who are frail or in any way compromised, or they're living with an elderly person and so on, there certainly are reasons other than direct sickness, that would suggest that one not feel the absolute obligation to assist at Mass.
With Mass, we've had live streaming now for quite a while.
Yeah, about a year and a half.
And I mean, we shifted to that quite rapidly.
Very
the parishes
quickly.
did an amazing job.
They did an amazing job.
Now some of them are reducing or eliminating.
Yes.
Some are reducing or eliminating live streams. Do you see live streaming disappearing altogether? Do you see it going away gradually?
I see a lot of places eventually kind of coming to the conclusion, we have 50 or 40 people watching Mass. Is it worth setting up? No. I think we'll have to. I'm sure the cathedral, for example, will always
continue
because it has a good setup. But I looked at the numbers, and they're half of what they were when we were closed.
Which is good news, really.
It is.
I mean,
providing that the other half is in church, and
yes.
I think that's true. But I don't know. I would think if you're setting up a whole ministry of live streaming and you realize that there are 30 people watching, that it might be reason for a parish to kind of engage those wonderful volunteers in another ministry, like hospitality for people who are there or something.
Yeah, right. There are still many tensions with people, both in the public, but also in our churches with different views on how to stay safe and so forth.
Right.
What advice do you give to all of us
I think, as we all know, that the best protection is the vaccine. The vaccination, a double vaccination, is the best protection. Some people, for health reasons or maybe even for other reasons, are not vaccinated or will not be vaccinated. Then it's up to them to kind of keep the older way of not spreading a disease. It's up to them to be more conscientious about masking and social distancing.
Right.
Whereas we know that although there can be breakthroughs in the vaccinated, they are proportionately quite small.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it is. And I think I look around in church, and on Sunday at the cathedral, I would have said 60% were still wearing masks.
Right. Yeah.
60, maybe 70. But there were some people without.
Yep.
And I assume that the people without are vaccinated. I think it would be quite inappropriate if they were unmasked and unvaccinated.
Right.
I think that would be, not to take care of the common good in an appropriate way.
Switching to the other thing that has changed since the last time we've talked, it hasn't changed so much, but many new things have happened. And it's the situation with residential schools.
Oh yes, that's so sad and tragic.
And people have asked a lot of questions, and I'm just reflecting some of those Are there any discussions now that are ongoing with First Nations in our region?
In our regions, yes, there are the beginnings of serious conversations. We've certainly been talking with individual people.
Yeah.
Now, sort of in the preparation draft stage, so to speak, there is the possibility of a covenant or protocol of reconciliation with First Nations, particularly in Kamloops, which was particularly hit by the disclosure of the unmarked graves.
Yeah.
And a lot more will be coming forth. Many have come forward to express their views. They want to contribute to the Truth and Reconciliation process. There's certainly been discussions at the level of the bishops of British Columbia and at the national level.
Yeah. And many people, obviously, we've heard from so many people in our archdiocese wanting to know how they can also be part of the...
Yeah, they've certainly, a lot of people have kind of come forward, say they would like to do something.
Yeah.
Someone here in the Chancery, James Borkowski, is kind of overseeing some of the activities and ways in which this can happen. We're also going to give people the opportunity to make a contribution. We're having a second collection on the second weekend of September, which will help to fund initiatives that will go exclusively, really, to healing and reconciliation with First Nations. We know we're going to take our cues from what their leadership wants. We know that there's work to be done on sort of people suffering from the trauma that this has caused, and the trauma that it's aroused from residential schools in general,
right,
which we know is still ongoing. I think we kind of have an obligation to do something.
Right, yeah.
Extend our hand.
Recently, with the Coptic Church in Surrey burning down, with incidents of vandalism that have been reported, how do you feel that the Church with First Nations people can stay on the path to reconciliation?
Well, I think one of the first things I'd say is that I've never understood, and there's no evidence that any of this vandalism is caused by First Nations people themselves.
No.
And they've been very outspoken that they do not see vandalism as a way to help heal and reconcile the relationships between us. I think it's simply anarchic behavior among small groups of people who vandalize churches now and will vandalize something else tomorrow. I think that there are small groups in society that think mistakenly that this is a way to attract attention and perhaps find some sort of solution. I don't see that at all, but...
Right. The solution is going to come from First Nations.
It's going to come from First Nations. It's going to come by working together. Healing never, burning down anything is never healing, and particularly when it happens on reserves.
Right.
It's very sad.
Some people believe that the Church has been unfairly targeted and blamed, perhaps mostly in the media, for its involvement in residential schools. How do you see this?
Well, I think the Church has to admit that we made mistakes, serious mistakes, and whether it's unfair, I think probably some media reports have been unfair, but I hesitate to say that it's by no means all.
Right.
Who's kind of beating unfairly and who's trying to tell a story objectively, in which we, I think, have to accept our degree of responsibility in the truth.
What's next in the Archdiocese for reconciliation? How do you see it unfolding from this point forward?
That's a great question. I think one of the things will be is if we can arrange a kind of covenant and a protocol, if we can sort of have some resources that would be made available as means of dialogue. We've made small gestures already in our schools to try to beef up the component of First Nations learning, also from a Catholic perspective, to develop resources. Some have already been made available. I think we should also kind of make steps to better inform our priests and lay faithful about a lot of people in Vancouver were not born in Canada.
Right.
And residential schools are quite foreign to their understanding, and so there's a real educational component. And we have people well formed and trained in the Archdiocese who can really help with this. That's one of the great benefits of people who've come forward, and even a recent graduate with a doctorate,
right,
who's an active parishioner in the Archdiocese, has a great expertise in residential schools. So I think there's a considerable amount of, I think, educational effort that we can pursue.
Switching very differently now.
Okay.
Have you had any vacation time in the last year and a half?
Last summer, I
had the question, do archbishops take vacations? That was
one.
one.
Archbishops take vacations, you bet.
But you haven't had one in a long time.
I haven't had one this year. I'm hoping to go to visit my sister in the United States in October.
Yeah. I was going to ask, is there a favorite type of vacation or
usually
style of vacation?
I often have gone on vacation with a priest friend, a Basilian friend, and total relaxing.
Yeah.
I like to go to Europe for vacation, to be honest, because I spent so many years of my life there.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite. I don't go to beaches or.
I imagine you being in beautiful places, but reading.
I do read a lot on vacation.
Yeah.
And I like to visit things. I like to go to to art galleries and to see things that I've seen before now, but to return.
Well, I hope you have a good vacation. I mean, a lot of people, obviously, this is summertime. They're on vacation in BC. There's a lot of wildfires.
Yeah.
And of course, many people are not traveling like they once did.
Yeah, originally I thought that I might go to Quebec or something, but it's the summer's proving that's not the best time to do that. So, but I have these 10 days marked off in October.
Thank you again, Archbishop. This is wonderful to be able to talk to you like this. I hope we get to do it again soon.
So do I, McConaughey. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I assume with others. Look forward to maybe September.
Very good. Thanks again.
Wonderful.